Yep.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Acting President Board of Trustees of the Village of Burr Ridge. It's January 28, 2019. Before we start, will you join us in a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model.
Here.
Trustee Pavesa.
Here.
Trustee Matal.
Here.
Trustee Snyder.
Here.
Trustee Schiappa.
Here.
Thank you. Residents' comments. Now the consent agenda. All items listed within an asterisk are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda. Minutes. A, approval of regular board meeting January 14th, 2019. B, receive and file draft of Plan Commission meeting of January 21st, 2019. Ordinances. 6A, adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 55 of the Burr Ridge Municipal Code, sign ordinance PC 05-2018, text amendments, sign ordinance. 7, resolutions. Adoption of a resolution authorizing the village to enter into a contract for the purchase of electricity from the lowest cost electricity provider for the village street lighting. B, adoption of resolution regarding construction on state highways. C, adoption of resolution approving the annual publication of the Village of Burr Ridge zoning map. 7, 8, under considerations. J, approval of recommendation to waive bid process and award contract for 2019 EAB treatment of Kramer Tree Services in the amount of $12,240. Like to have that removed. L. K, approval of recommendation to award contract to Mackey Consultants, LLC, an amount not to exceed $12,500 for engineering services for a preview of tollway project to relocate Bedford Park transmission main. L, receive and file a resignation letter from probationary patrol officer Juan Santiago. M, approval of recommendation.
Remove. Please remove.
M?
M.
Okay, M is going to be removed. And approval of vendor list dated January 28, 2019 in the amount of $354,360.09 for all funds, plus $202,497.54 for payroll, for a grand total of $556,857.63, which includes special expenditures of $12,389 for 10 custom windows at Village Hall and $28,243.25 to Lindo Brothers for the 2018 road program. So at this time, I'd like a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Well, hold it, I gotta read them first.
Right.
Let me read them first.
Quick on the draw there.
Yeah.
5 minutes, 5A and B. Ordinances, 6A. Resolutions, A, B, and C. And considerations would be,
K.
would be
K.
K,
L.
L, and N.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call?
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
Trustee Deveja?
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. Okay, 8. Do we take the ones that got removed first, or as they come up?
Up is what we normally do. Yeah, right. Maybe one, I don't know if you want to talk about one in closed session or not.
No. As they come up?
Yeah, as they come up.
Okay.
Eight.
Under considerations, A8, update regarding Sterigenics in Willowbrook, Illinois.
This, besides the next item on the agenda, the only update I have is to report that with the federal government reopening today, I did get an email scheduling a conference call with participants for the week of February 11th to get updates from the United States Environmental Protection Agency about their ongoing testing and just a general update from them now that the federal government's reopened. And also, I will let you know that Evan has put in front of your chairs tonight more information for your notebooks. This is regarding action taken by the Village of Willowbrook 2 weeks ago to do some further air testing in Willowbrook. Evan and I are available to answer any questions if you have any questions.
Any questions? Yes.
This was, obviously we just got it, so I haven't looked at it yet. Is this authorizing more testing, or there's no results from any testing in here? It's just authorizing more testing?
It's, Evan, I believe that's authorizing more testing to be done, but Evan.
Yes, they're going to start a 30-day regimen pretty soon here. Okay. The purpose of these packets, Trustee Francis had requested these a couple of meetings ago. I've just decided that we're going to have just updates every single meeting as to what has been going on an official basis between other government officials and the EPA or vice versa. Sometimes these things can get out of control if it just becomes too unwieldy to do 100-page updates. So you'll just be getting one of these every board meeting until you say stop. So that's just what's involved in those. So some of that stuff, of course, took place last Monday when we had a board meeting, so I just didn't have it for you. So just additional information for you to review on an ongoing basis.
Any other questions? 8B, consideration to direct the village attorney to petition to join the lawsuit.
Staff has received direction from the board, a consensus from the board to put this on tonight's agenda for the village board to consider directing the village attorney to petition to join the lawsuit that the Illinois Attorney General and the DuPage State's Attorney has filed requesting that Sterigenics the court order Sterigenics to be shut down pending further testing and study on that issue of ethylene oxide. Scott Euler, our village attorney, is available to answer any questions you may have, as well as I can.
Zach, did you have your hand up?
When I've pretty well looked this over. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but I wanted to make a motion to direct the village attorney to petition to join the federal lawsuit on Sterigenics, as we've previously discussed.
Second.
Right. On behalf of the village, make a request to join the litigation.
Petition to join. We're requesting to join. That's my understanding. Correct.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the matter? Yes.
Mr. Euler can kind of explain what are some of our next steps for our residents, what we are doing.
Right. So the board did discuss this in a little more depth at your last meeting, and the option to petition to join the litigation was discussed. The consensus seemed to be at the last meeting that you were interested. It was not on the agenda for an action by the board. It was not an action item on last meeting's agenda. So it's on the agenda today for that purpose. I provided a memo summarizing what the next steps are in the process. The City of Durham has filed this petition already in the litigation to be allowed to intervene. The Village of Burr Ridge would do the same, would follow that same process to petition and seek the permission of the court to join the litigation. After that, the process after that, we've discussed that at some length, I think, before as well. I think the village would probably monitor the litigation at the outset, that the lead entity or individual in the suit is really the Office of the Attorney General and the DuPage County State's Attorney. So at this point, I think you'd be monitoring the litigation to a large extent until the court takes control and sets a procedure for discovery.
Okay. And if we are allowed to join the lawsuit, we'll be party to discovery.
Correct. Okay. I mean, the action obviously is seeking immediate action by the court to
Correct.
cease action by Sterigenics. I can't say what's going to happen with that immediate petition. Nothing has happened at this point, so we'll monitor the litigation presently. We'll file our petition on behalf of the village, and the next step would be to request the court to allow us to become a party.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? There's been a motion and second. Roll call.
Trustee Model?
Yes?
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passes. 8C, consideration of acting village president's nomination to appoint trustee Guy Francis as chairman, trustee Tony Schiappa, Jennifer Houch, Jennifer McConney, John McCracken, Tom Layden, and Yvonne Meyer to the Environmental Quality Commission for terms expiring May 10, 2021. Any consideration, any comments? I'd like a motion to approve 8C.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes?
Trustee Francis?
Yes?
6-0.
Motion passes. Thank you. 8D, consideration of Plan Commission recommendation to approve a special use for a non-conforming structure, Z25-2018, 16W020 79th Street, Dodevsky.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Walter to present this on behalf of the Plan Commission.
Thank you, Trustee Bethesda. Thank you, Administrator. As stated, this is item 8D. This is a request for a special use for an illegal structure. This petition was recommended for approval by the Plan Commission on a 6-to-1 vote. I just want to back up and explain what I mean by illegal structure. So, in terms of the legal standing of structures, and that could be a house, a fence, as in this case, a driveway. Any type of man-made structure is always governed by the zoning ordinance in the village of Burr Ridge. Most of the items that you see in your normal day-to-day in the village of Burr Ridge are what we call legally conforming. That means they were built to the specifications of the zoning ordinance, and they remain as such because of that said development. So if you build a house that is within the setbacks and is also subject to the height requirements, this is a legally conforming structure. If it were to be demolished, you could rebuild it exactly as is, conforming. Legally non-conforming generally could be referred to as grandfathering. So if you were to build a fence in your front yard, which is not permitted in the village of Burr Ridge, but you were annexing into the village of Burr Ridge, that would be legally non-conforming. It was built under different development standards, but once it came into the village, it was then legally non-conforming. We permit it to remain as long as it is useful and stands, but if it were to fall over, it could not be built there again. So it's legal where it is now, but at some time in the future, it will cease to become legally non-conforming. It will need to be brought into conformance. Some things are simply illegal, though, and we have very rare cases of there being patently illegal structures in the village. This is something that was generally built that was not to code at any time, either at some point and then brought into compliance or otherwise thereafter. This fence that's on the property at 16 West 020th is such a illegally non-conforming structure. So the structure at hand is actually a chain link fence with barbed wire on top. The fence is necessarily, oh, thank you, Doug, I appreciate it. The fence generally surrounds what we call Lions Truck Sales at 16 West 020 79th Street. It is basically where the red line is on the map. It's a triangle-shaped property, and the fence, the chain link fence with the barbed wire on top, generally surrounds the property as shown. The property was originally developed in 1980, and at that time, there was a variation given to allow a fence to be developed that is a 4-foot tall wooden solid fence. Now, anyone who drives by this property will see this wooden 4-foot tall solid fence. It is legally allowed to be there, even though it does not meet the normal standards of the zoning ordinance. This is legally conforming because we've given it a variation and a permit to do so. This fence has been reconstructed several times with permits in the past. However, there is the existence of a illegally non-conforming chain link and barbed wire structure on the property surrounding the property. At some point in time, the structure was erected and it did not come to the attention of village staff. Now, under our rules for zoning code enforcement, things do not get investigated until a complaint is made or otherwise somehow brought to the official attention of staff on some official basis. Village staff, again, as we've talked about on a code basis, does not go around town looking for violations. We may see things that are a violation, but unless someone officially complains about it, we do not get involved, unless there's some emergency issue like a building falling over, but that rarely happens in town. So under the zoning ordinance, section 12 specifically, they are permitted to ask for a continued use of an illegal non-conforming structure through the use of a special use. Now, a special use, as we all know, requires a public hearing, and that's what the Plan Commission considered for several meetings, actually, but finally last week. We had some scheduling issues with the petitioner, and it finally was taken up last Monday. The Plan Commission discussed this at some length. Ultimately, the decision of the Plan Commission was to recommend approval. The primary basis for the special use was that this is a very uniquely located property. It abuts directly up to Interstate 55, as you can see in this picture. That's Interstate 55 right there. There really aren't any other, according to staff's research, there aren't many other properties in the village that directly abut Interstate 55. There are many that abut frontage road and then 55, but there aren't many that have truly neighboring access to interstate right-of-way such as this. And because this is a high visibility business with high value inventory, we've had a lot of issues with robberies there. We've had some very high value robberies go on in crime at this particular address. And so the petitioner has said if we would be able to grant them a temporary special use to allow them to continue to have this fence up. It's really their only means of true security at this point beyond lights and the odd camera that they happen to have. But this is the only real blocking mechanism. The Plan Commission ultimately recommended that the special use be recommended for approval for 5 years. So what this basically means is that this structure will be legally non-conforming or illegally non-conforming, but not needed to be taken down for a period of 5 years, subject to when an ordinance would be otherwise approved if it were approved. So it would be about February 2024 when the special use would expire. At that time, they could theoretically apply for a special use, but the more likely outcome would be that they would need to remove the fence and replace it with either a legally conforming fence or just not replace it with anything at all. Those would be really their options at that point. There were no residents objecting to the petition at this time. Commissioner Irwin is here if you'd like any further perspective from the Plan Commission, and I can answer any further questions you have at this time.
Any questions?
None.
There was, if I'm not mistaken, there were other issues too with this business as well, that there was a lot of theft, and that's why they were required to have those fences, or?
Well, so originally 38 years ago in 1980, this has really been what it is for about 40 years. They were only allowed to put up the wooden fence. The wooden fence was actually not put up as a requirement to really reduce theft. It was there to reduce the visible impact on neighboring businesses and homes. If you were to drive by, you can see some of the top of the fence, some of the business, but much less than you would have without the existence of the 4-foot tall solid fence. Really, a 4-foot tall solid fence can do nothing to keep people out who are committed to getting over the fence. So it was really just kind of there to provide mitigation for site visibility.
But part of the purpose is for safety as well, for their...
They would like to keep the chain link and barbed wire as a means to provide security for the business, exactly.
Right.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion to approve the recommendation then?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, roll call.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passes. B, consideration of Plan Commission recommendation to approve a special use for automobile sales, Z01-2019, 60 Shore Drive, Nadaf.
Yes, I'd like, once again, for Evan to present this on behalf of the Plan Commission.
Thank you again, Trustee Pavesa and Village Administrator. This is a request for an approval of a special use for an automobile sales use at 60 Shore Drive. Now, I just want to be clear, there already is an automobile sales use currently operating 60 Shore Drive. However, when these special uses change hands or the business that previously had one is not in business anymore, the old special use expires. This is a request for a new special use, though. So again, there is a current automobile sales operation at this time here, but this is a request for a new special use. So the petitioner is part of a local consortium seeking to buy an existing automobile sales business at the subject property, and then continuing to operate said business as a luxury online-based automobile sales businesses. So at this location, 2 previous automobile sales uses have occupied this space recently, but have for one reason or another shut down and are no longer business or in the process of being bought, such as this in this case. There have been code-related violations regarding both of the previous issues. The previous tenants. The first was Brandmax. The current one has been Midwest Auto. Staff has been out to investigate both businesses. However, it's been staff's understanding that the new owners would be really removing a lot of those issues from the property because of a new business plan. The Plan Commission concluded that the request for special use was within the character of the neighborhood, and they recommended it be approved unanimously. There are 5 conditions that were recommended as part of the approval. These 4 are generally related to all automobile sales uses in the village. The first is that it shall be limited to the sale of automobiles with minor detailing and repairs, be limited to the square foot of floor area known as Suite A, be limited to the petitioner, and shall expire when they leave. These are the 2 most important ones that we ran into issues with on the previous business. The outside display or storage of any goods, materials, and automobiles shall be prohibited. So the petitioner, if they would be approved, they would not be allowed to advertise outdoor sales. They could not park a for sale vehicle out in the parking lot, advertise a for sale sign in the windshield, anything like that. All the cars would have to be stored inside. The 5th and final condition would be outdoor mechanical maintenance of any vehicles shall be prohibited. So we had a discussion regarding detailing, general servicing of said vehicles. However, the Plan Commission said that because this was next to the highway and there were no residents in the area, that service, detailing, otherwise quiet activities would be okay regarding outside activity. But they could not change a transmission outside. They couldn't do a tire rotation out in their parking lot. It would be really limited to detailing, maybe vacuuming out the mats to the inside of the car. But the petitioner has said that all the mechanical maintenance will be done off-site anyway, usually out of town or at Burbridge Car Care. So they did not anticipate that would be an impact based on their business plan. There were no objections to the petition. Again, Commissioner Irwin is here to answer any questions you have, as am I. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
So the petitioner is aware of the issues and problems that have occurred with the past 2 tenants,
Yes.
the past 2 automobile sales facilities there, and it's crystal clear that he'll be abiding by these 5 conditions that the Plan Commission is recommending?
Yes, that was one of the first things we talked about, was this location having some history of automobile sales uses and violations. But petitioner is actually was the former general manager at Global Luxury Imports. We never had any code violations with that particular business. They operated well within the parameters of their special use, otherwise abided with all the conditions that the village imposed upon them. So we do not anticipate they're having any issues, but they've also been made well aware of what has happened at the property.
Thank you. And also, the petition will come back and present a signed request to staff as well?
Yes. Nothing binding here. It talks about the permit for a sign. They do have to come back and get a sign permit that is separate from this request.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else?
Real quick, This business will be paying sales tax in the village, I'm assuming, we're gonna generate sales tax off of sale of automobiles in the village?
Yes, this is like any other vehicle sales business. We're entitled to the sales tax of vehicles at the site.
Is this a brand new business or are they moving locations?
This will be a brand new entity. They are technically buying the old entity, but the old entity really has liquidated a lot of their resources. There's not many cars there. If you were to drive there right now, it's really not operating. So it really will be functionally a new business. It'll be renamed. It'll be, I think, Burr Ridge Luxury Exchange. So for all intents and purposes, it'll be a new business.
Could I have a motion to approve the Plan Commission's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments? Roll call.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passes 6-0. Review and discussion of general fund financial status, budget goals for fiscal year 2018-19, and budget goals for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Yes, there's two presentations here, well, three. The first one on the general fund financial status, I'd like to ask Jerry Sapp, our finance director, to present that, and then I will go over the budget goals for the current fiscal year and the next fiscal year. Jerry?
Good evening. This is just a quick snapshot of how we are performing here on our general fund budget. We had planned the 2018-19 budget with a $25,000 surplus, and as of right now, we're projecting an $805,665 surplus. Most of our on the revenue side, most of the revenues are coming in as we anticipated, either a little under or a little over. There's two big variances that assisted with this surplus. Permit fees, we're having another stellar year in that area. They're exceeding our estimates by about $293,725. And on the downside, telecommunication will continue a decline. We've missed estimates by about $68,000. We continue to see people rearranging their cell and telephone bills and trying to save money, and that's kind of impacted that line items over the last few years. So in total, the general fund revenues have exceeded estimates by $198,000. The big portion of the surplus comes on the expenditure side. Several key situations have created expenditures to be under budget by about $600,000. $170,000 was saved in health insurance. Doug had moved the plan into a smaller pool, and there was a cost savings there. And then we had several employees change their coverage, some newer employees that changed from family coverage to single coverage. That also helped in that $170,000 savings. Also, $195,000 was saved in our general liability insurance. We have a reserve fund on that, and this year, instead of writing a check for it out of general fund expenses, we paid that premium through our reserves. There was $120,000 saved in police salaries and overtime, primarily through shift relief and court times. And then $110,000 in public works salaries and contractual services. We had lost 2 longtime employees and we had their positions filled with the newer staff. And there was also under contractual services, we reduced the brush chipping program to once a year. So that's kind of the picture of where we're at today in the 2018-19 budget. Quick look ahead on the 19-20 budget. Right now, preliminary budget projections show a $292,000 surplus. On the revenue side, we see kind of flat performance, about a $31,000 increase or a 0.4 growth over the prior budget. Expenditures are estimated currently at $240,000 or 2.7% lower than our prior budget. So all of these numbers are fairly preliminary. Everything's been entered into our budgeting system. Doug's getting ready to all the department heads sit down with the village administrator and go over line item by line item and kind of fine tune the budget in the month of the rest of this February. And there's some capital needs also that needs to be addressed with the surplus. So that's kind of like the snapshot as we're at today. Doug?
Well, thank you, Jerry. Obviously, this is very good news for the village. It'll go a long way toward financing our capital projects for the next fiscal year, 1920. And most of that was achieved, as Jerry noted, through savings. And I've got to give a lot of credit to our police chief and public works director, who took very seriously your direction and your strategic goals to look for cost savings and to reduce costs wherever possible. And I think they have done an outstanding job in implementing that goal. It's very rare that we see a surplus as we see here, and I'm very, very pleased with that. As Jerry said, also, we're still looking at the FY 1920 budget, so those numbers are very, very preliminary, but we are targeting a smaller general fund budget and still looking at hopefully growing revenues. We're very conservative in all of these estimates. If we're going to be wrong, we want to be wrong in the right way. So I'm hopeful that as we get into the budget and we get into March and April, when we actually present the final budget to you, that these numbers might be even better. But if they're not, I'll be very happy if they remain where they're at, because I think that we're in very good financial position for the current fiscal year and for fiscal year 19 and 20. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the general fund before I go into budget goals.
Yes.
I just want to point out a thank you to both of you for what you did with the budget stuff, but Doug, also thank you with the health insurance stuff. That was your idea. I know you were looking at that. I mean, this is a really positive thing. I know these are one-time things we can't always count on, but like you said, it's sure going to help next year, and I'm very grateful to be on a team like this that delivered such good results, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll go to the next item.
Well, then we have budget goals to talk about, and I'll try to be brief. You've had the opportunity to review these, but we always kind of give you an update on the accomplishments, where we're at with the goals for the current fiscal year, and then also go over new budget goals for the next fiscal year, so you know how we're preparing the budget for your consideration in March and April. As far as the current fiscal year, the road program was completed in 2018. The 71st Street at Wolf Road, we're deferring to next year. That's a project that's largely will likely be dependent on grant funding, and we're holding a place in the budget, though, for the engineering in case the opportunity arises to proceed with that project. And I should say, if at any point you have any questions about any of these items, if I skip over an item that you have questions about, please interrupt, and we're more than happy to dig deeper into that. Also, the department heads are here, so they can answer more detailed questions than I may be able to. In the water fund, we had planned to do relocation and replacement of a water main on County Line Road at the Carriageway subdivision. The final cost estimates came in way over budget, so Dave Preissig, our village engineer, is going to continue to look at that and program that in for next fiscal year, and hopefully figure out a way to do this more efficiently. But so that's deferred.
Comment on that. So a while back, we had agreed to increase water rates to build up a fund to pay for these types of expenses. And now we have an actual need, a $900,000 need to pay for an aging water main. And so the decisions we made back then is going to pay off to help these residents with a new water main. Just want to make that comment.
Thank you. And I should add too that the Water Committee will be meeting 2 weeks, February 11th, before the board meeting, and we'll give you notice. And at that time, we'll look in more detail at the water fund, at this project, at water rates, how the water revenues are coming in for this year, and how we go forward.
Can you please be sure to give me notice for that meeting?
Sure. I'm going to skip over a lot of these items again. Stop if you have any questions, or if I'm going over something you want to go back to. I did, let's see, on page 7 here, I wanted to mention the branch pickup program, which we, due to the availability of weekly lawn waste pickup, we decided to go to a once-a-year branch pickup. The idea is that larger branches, larger materials would be collected by the village in our fall branch pickup program, but smaller materials can be collected at no charge to residents other than their standard franchise fee on a weekly basis. And so that saved us almost $20,000 by going to that once-a-year branch pickup. And anything else I wanted to mention? Under the stormwater fund, page 10, I wanted to mention the reimbursable account for detention and wetland maintenance. That was deferred. We had not even set a number on that yet. But that's something the Stormwater Committee continues to look at. And that's basically how can we help homeowners associations who are responsible for maintaining wetland or stormwater areas and wetland areas. And the Stormwater Committee continues to look at that to see where the village might be able to provide support for their efforts. And I think that's all I wanted to mention regarding this year's accomplishments on budget goals. If there's any question, if there are no more questions on that, I'll move on to the fiscal year 1920 budget goals and objectives. First, I'll mention the road program that has been reviewed by the Street Policy Committee and recommended and approved by the board. That is our annual road local street maintenance program where we're resurfacing local streets on a schedule based on every other year survey. We're also doing our survey this coming summer of all roads in the village to update our capital projects plan. And for the 2019 road program, we've budgeted $766,900 for that program. Also in fiscal year 1920, the Burr Ridge Parkway resurfacing is scheduled, and that will be paid through grant funding and our motor fuel tax funding, with the village's engineering portion of that, $24,000. Under the sidewalk fund, I wanted to mention that the County Line Road North connection sidewalk is planned for fiscal year 1920. That is a sidewalk that will be on the east side of County Line Road from Longwood to the north end of the village at 60th Street, Catherine Legge Park. And that is partially funded through grant funding, but the majority of that will come out of our pathway fund. We will be needing to show in the budget a transfer into the pathway fund to cover that expense. But again, as I was speaking earlier with the surpluses, we're real close to being able to fully fund that without dipping into reserves, but we'll see how that comes up in the end. But I'm very confident that that we'll have the funds to proceed with that project.
Question, on that one there, you're talking that project's about 800,000 and the grants for less than 300, so we have to come up with the rest?
Yes.
The 609.
Actually, Dave, what is it? Did we, is 609 our portion of the project? Yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
I was just wondering, I thought that was,
the math
that was an awful lot, about 500,000, okay.
Isn't 790, it's 284.
So one other sidewalk fund item that I wanted to mention that isn't on this list, didn't make it on the list, but I think I would like to try to include in this year's budget is a sidewalk on County Line Road north of 87th Street. I'm sure all of you have noticed over the years that our sidewalk that extends from basically from the Village Hall all the way down to 91st Street on the west side of the street is all in place except for one property, 300-foot section, I believe it's about 300 feet, where there's no sidewalk. It's north of 87th Street at 87th and County Line Road. The reason that wasn't put in was we didn't have an easement or right-of-way for it. And the village board made a decision years ago because they couldn't acquire it from the property owner. The property owner was not willing to sell. The village was not willing to go through an eminent domain lawsuit. And so the village board at that time decided to just leave it. There's a new owner of the property. The owner is in the process of recording an easement that will allow the village to go in and build that sidewalk. So we are recommending that that critical piece of infrastructure be added this current or next fiscal year. And that's approximately $80,000 is the cost of that sidewalk project.
Doug? Is the new owner developing it, or is it he's?
Evan, what's the new owner's plan?
So if you're driving north or south on County Line Road, it's the, call it the house with the windmill in the front yard. It has a chain link fence in the front. The property owner has bought that house. They're going to demolish the main house, put a new home up, and really make the home really shine on that land. They've also bought the corner property. They want to subdivide it eventually, but that doesn't appear to be a short-term issue for them, nor would the sidewalk impair their ability to subdivide it in any way. So that was part of the agreement, was just really, it was just working through the understanding that the sidewalk there would provide value to the homeowner, and they agreed that a sidewalk could be built in front of their property.
Well, if he develops it, we get a sideway.
Well, it's my understanding that we may get a sidewalk if it's subdivided. If it's divided into two lots, they're not subject to the subdivision.
Right. That was the main trip. Was that we're 99% sure we have not received the attorney's letter, but we think that they will be eligible for a plat exemption. That basically means that if they're eligible for any one of, I think, 8 conditions under the Illinois Plat Act, they're not required to come before the village and execute upon any of our half-street improvement policies that we have. And so we said, you know, in lieu of all that, would you be willing to just donate the 6 feet or whatever it turns out to be for a sidewalk? And they were very agreeable. Okay. That's very appreciative of them, of their willingness to connect this main thoroughfare through our village.
Yes.
So it's currently zoned R2A,
Yes.
and there's 2 lots of record there now?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions,
So
comments?
for still in the sidewalk fund, we are hoping to build what we call the Garfield Avenue connection sidewalk. And that's a sidewalk on Garfield Avenue on the north side of the village, north of Plainfield Road, that would connect the dead-end sidewalk at approximately 63rd Street south to connect with the Willowbrook sidewalk in the village of Willowbrook on Garfield. And Willowbrook has agreed to do their portion of the missing sidewalk. We'll do our portion. Of course, that's subject to a grant funding that we are hopeful of getting sometime in our announcement in March. And that would virtually pay all of our costs for that sidewalk. If we don't get the grant funding, we'll reconsider whether we want to proceed with that project or not. Again, going back to the water fund, the County Line Road carriageway sidewalk that I mentioned earlier is shown in the budget for fiscal year 1920 at nearly $1 million. So Water mains are surprisingly expensive. Again, I'll go through, skip over some of these items. If there's an item that you want to talk about, please let me know. Moving on to page 4, wanted to just point out that we are needing to replace or purchase a 10-ton plow truck for our Public Works Department, and just note the expense of that, $199,000 for that plow truck, dump truck and plow. Again, another expensive piece of equipment. That's why we try to keep our equipment replacement fund well stocked, because when we have to make those purchases, they are quite expensive. And I will just mention that one of the projects in this year's budget that we have deferred was the remodeling of the Village Hall restrooms. We went out, we got bids. We had trouble finding anyone to bid on it, given the numbers we had. It was our feeling that we needed to increase the amount. I think we had planned $27,000, but we're finding that that was not a realistic number. So we'll try again in fiscal year 1920. I feel strongly that it's a project we need to do. Those are public restrooms, and they're in poor condition, in my opinion. Whatever we decide to do, it'll be back before the board for your final consideration before we spend any money on that. I wanted to mention too that we've put in as a placeholder $75,000 for our sports facility investment. This is under the hotel motel fund, and we're just anticipating, as a follow-up to the feasibility study that the board approved, that there may be a need for follow-up plans or documents to be created, and we wanted to have a placeholder in case we needed to spend more money or desired to spend more money on that project. A couple of smaller items that I wanted to mention. One is our entryway signs are in poor condition, the wooden signs. I'd like to start replacing those to match the signs that public signs that we've put in the downtown area to match those signs. And so we put $7,000 in the budget to begin that. And Village of Burr Ridge merchandise. I would like to see us start getting in as part of our branding of the village, which is something the village board expressed as a goal. We'd like to begin some kind of merchandising program for shirts, water bottles, etc., that would provide the village logo. Some of them would be giveaways, some of them we would sell. Janet Kowal is working on that concept, and so just as kind of a starter fund, we've put $5,000 into the preliminary budget for that. There's a $150,000 expenditure in the sewer fund for village sanitary sewer evaluation. That's where we do an inflow and infiltration analysis. That is required for us to do. We haven't done that in a long time, and the MWRD requires us to do that to make sure that our systems are running efficiently. So that is something we need to do in this upcoming fiscal year. And under administration and community development, we deferred from this year to next year a comprehensive plan update. Our idea is to use that money just to evaluate housing, which is the strategic goal of the village board, is to evaluate residential zoning in the village and housing supply in the village. And that's something that we've deferred over to next year. We've also are recommending $15,000 for consultant review of our zoning ordinance performance standards. These are in the manufacturing districts. There are a variety of performance standards regarding light, noise, glare, air pollution, and we want to, given what's been going on in Willowbrook, We want to make sure that our standards are up to date and are of the highest possible. We're also recommending improved Village Hall foyer lighting. I don't know if the trustees have noticed this or if it bothers them as much as it does me, but our foyer is very dark and uninviting in my opinion, and we'd like to see what we can do to kind of dress that up. And so we've proposed putting in some money for that for next year. And then village branded clothing, that really is part of the merchandising effort, but we would be looking at doing something for employees and elected and appointed officials in that regard. In our GIS and Information Technology Fund, we're looking at a GIS intern where we've transferred or made some changes, going to a new GIS program. And so we want to hire an intern to help us inputting data for that. We'd also like to, in information technology, order BS&A work order system. This relates to the board's strategic goal of performance metrics, implementing performance metrics for village staff.
Go down a little more, Doug. It's off the screen.
Sorry. Yeah. I think I went too far. This is a computerized work order system that allows us to effectively track and manage workload across all divisions. The initial system would integrate utility billing and service calls for meter readings, replacements, and new installations. Work orders provides performance metrics and work management, timekeeping, and cost tracking for various tasks such as main breaks, snow plowing, street repairs, tree maintenance, special projects, etc. The system will provide a paperless process to streamline the workflow and flow of information for the department. The budget is complete cost of software configuration and training. And so we want to give that a try, and we'll start in Public Works, but it could be used elsewhere.
This is just the software, or does that include training? Is there hardware we have to buy?
It's software and the training, I believe, right? Yeah.
Okay. Will we have to buy additional hardware for all the employees,
No.
like iPads or something like that?
No.
Okay. And Dave, have you had experience with this software?
BSNA is our standard package for financial platforms and accounting.
Is it a one-time fee, or is there like a monthly subscription as well?
So as Dave mentioned, we have an ERP system. BSNA has all of our financials, utility billing. We've been on them for 2009, I believe, and this is just one more, their module that we want to add on. And then the price I had listed there was complete, the software, the training, the implementation, project management. And there is like a software maintenance of I don't know, maybe $1,000 a year after that, or $990, about $600 a year. Yeah. So.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Jerry.
And I also wanted to mention the business licensing software. If the village board on your agenda tonight and is consideration on whether to proceed with the recommendation of the Economic Development Committee regarding business licensing, and if you do proceed with that, we would purchase some software that would help in that program. And that is all I have for budget goals for fiscal year 19-20. We have completed our first and very preliminary draft of the budget. I will be meeting with department heads and the finance director and assistant finance director. We have budget meetings where we sit down in a conference room and go over go over the budget line by line and figure out, if there's anything we can cut or if we want to add or whatever. And then after that, we will submit to the board a draft budget for your further review and comment and consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
I think you're making a lot of headway on the project.
Thank you.
And one question.
Yes.
We're going to go over all this again when we review the budget. Okay.
Okay, G, discussion regarding creation of a business license program.
So I'd like Evan or Andres, thank you, Andres Beltran, our management analyst, to go over and present the recommendation of the Economic Development Committee to begin a business license program for the village. Andres?
Thank you very much. Good evening. The staff is requesting direction on whether to continue implementing a business licensing program. We brought this, as Doug has mentioned, to the Economic Development Committee on November 20th, and the Economic Development Committee unanimously approved going forward with it to bring it to the board's attention. The goal would be to create a database of business information, but also to look at generate revenue for supporting economic development and code compliance activities at the village, and also annual surveying of all businesses. So currently, the village doesn't really have a unified system to know what businesses are inside the community. We have our zoning certificate of occupancy, but unless they come in and look for it and apply for it, we don't know they exist. And then also we use water billing at the same time, but if their water is just billed to whoever their landowner is, if they're leasing property, we don't know about them. And so this creates a system that might not have all the information we want. So in creating this business licensing program, we can take all of that information and pool it under one source. It would also be combined with an annual survey for the business license. That way we could get information not only on our business environment, but what businesses exist in the community and if they're doing well, and if we have targets that we can possibly go out and do business visitations with as well. So when we're talking about revenue, like I said, the revenue before would be dedicated to economic development and code compliance. There's some additional code compliance materials that we need, equipment that we need that is kind of getting older and it's breaking down, and it would help support that. Mainly in the fact because that helps support our businesses, maintain a good atmosphere in the community to, do their business as well. But also support some economic development activities like going to ICSC conferences to help attract businesses to the community and make marketing materials also. When we were talking out of the EDC committee, the recommendation for an annual business license was approximately $100 a year on their recommendation. If staff has estimates of about 500 businesses possibly that are operating in the village of Burr Ridge, so that would be an estimate of about $50,000 per year for it. To make this process easier, as Doug kind of spoke about before, we are looking at possibly purchasing a BSNA module or let them apply online. However, we would have paper copies because sometimes people just like to use paper, so we have that also as well for them if they wanted it. For the annual relicensing, we'd look at it as syncing up with the village's fiscal year, so May 1 to April 30th. Hopefully we can get the businesses licensed in a little earlier in the months. January, February tends to be a quiet period, so if we can get them and start getting them licensed before that, we'll know what's going on with it, and like I said, it would link up really well with the fiscal budget. If we were to do this program, if the village board were to want us to continue to implement this, our outreach would start with those who are in the ZCO program, as well as water billing, and then we just reach out to the property managers to see what businesses out there. And then from there, we just do an expanded search on, Google and other business listing sites that we have. So staff is looking for recommendation or direction on whether to continue looking to implement this program or not.
So so first question is, wouldn't we have like 2 levels of licensing, or maybe it just doesn't seem fair to charge like the same fee to like a business like Eddie Merlot's and Francesca's, which is not, it's like a small boutique or like a smaller store. So maybe we can have 2 levels, or have like premium licensing and we can offer them some value for, some resources?
That is a possibility, and it is done in other towns as well that we've looked at. Sometimes they do it by, revenues that come in. Sometimes they do it by size as well. The EDC discussed that a bit and really came down on, a flat fee is kind of the easiest to administer, whether you're large or small, because while smaller businesses might like having a smaller fee, larger businesses can also wonder why, how much more are they getting for an increased fee. However, that would be up to the village board as well.
I mean, if it's a source to increase your revenue and you can offer some value add, maybe, just kind of like the chamber has directories, you could give them directories, or, we can think of things that you can provide as value add.
Yes?
So I served on the committee, and I'm generally very much opposed to raising taxes on fees on residents and businesses. When we talked about the $100, we talked about this as a fairly nominal fee for most businesses, that it was so small, didn't seem the trouble to have different things, and the goal, again, what it's going to be invested in, the economic development, the code compliance, it's both safety as well as growing the tax base, and hopefully these businesses will, if we're successful, have more returns coming in, more customers, more clients, help develop the village. And we also talked about the frustration in the past. We try to get information on these businesses to help them, and they don't return the survey, they don't do anything. It was really more than generating revenue. I think the most important thing was to collect data on these businesses and find out what their pain points are. And because there's a dollar amount attached to it, they have to fill out the survey. So it was kind of hopefully a nominal fee. That was the intention of the fee.
If I may, to Trustee Model's point, we did do a survey of business licenses in around the area. $100 is roughly within the variance of it. So.
Any other questions? Yes.
Are there other communities nearby us that do not require business licenses, like Burr Ridge currently?
Every community that I saw into seems to have some sort of variation of a business license. Most of them do have them of sorts. Sometimes they do zoning occupancies as well, but like I said, most places have business licensing. And one point I forgot to bring up in it is that I had a business call me last week. I had 3 businesses call me last week on the same day asking if we did business licensing, which was unique. And so I asked the third business, why are you the third person that calls me on a day that this doesn't happen? Google and some other listings are starting to do verified businesses, which require, strangely enough, having a verified business license through your locality, saying with their name and location on it. So it's a little bit more specific than like the state business license. So part of our concern also was if we don't have this program, if we just have a ZCO program, that might not be recognized as easily. And going into, that might put our retailers or even our businesses at disadvantages if they're not popping up at the top of a Google search. So.
Does Willowbrook have business licenses?
I believe they do. Yes, they do.
Yes.
Back to that question, it was my recollection when we looked at the numbers that every town around us had one. To your question, most towns have one, and like what Andre was saying, these searches, these other things, I can tell you I've got businesses in 3 other towns, and every one of them does have a license fee. It's much higher than this, and oftentimes it comes with other onerous requirements. So this looks like a pretty reasonable and hopefully useful thing that will help the businesses.
Any other questions or comments? Yes?
While we're discussing licensing, et cetera, we've had a situation which we've worked in over by the Capri with regarding our the valet service. And there's no way to control the situation, even though we've given Capri the option to continue with the restaurant. We wanted the valet twice on Thursday, 2 valets Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The employees moved to the parking lot. The valet is going to have only 4 cars, 3 or 4 cars there. It's still not working. So this is a perfect situation to possibly put it on the agenda for maybe next meeting or something where we can possibly consider something coming through, or have some planning commission, whatever, discuss a license fee for a valet service. So if they're not going to do the job, they're choking the parking lot. When it snows, you have 4, 5, 6, 8 cars there. If they're parking on the street, it's a problem. We've got to have some control, and we've had no control up till now. So can we put it on the agenda for a little safety situation for next week, or have some discussion?
If the board wants it on the agenda, yeah, we can put it on the agenda.
You're going to license those businesses that do business in Burr Ridge, you're gonna single valet out?
Only
There are
because,
plumbing companies that come here, there are landscapers that come here, electricians that come here. Are you gonna require all those businesses to be licensed in the village, to conduct business in the village?
So it was my understanding, when Trustee Snyder brought this to me, the purpose of the valet license would be to really control something that accesses public roads and uses public facilities like parking lots on a very specific basis, like a valet. So how it works in other towns is generally valets are required to submit a parking plan or a traffic plan as to where the cars will be picked up, where they'll be using, what roads they'll be using, and where they'll be parking cars. And under that auspice, the village is then able to regulate valets on their behavior. Valets are not a business under either the business licensing program that we proposed or the ZCO program that we have now. So it's a very specific license. It's like a liquor license or a scavenger license for trash that we have now. We do have examples of specific licenses for specific kinds of business activities, not necessarily we'll call it an addressed business in Burr Ridge. Trustee Bethesda had reached out about that, we'll call it one of that same questions about who would be attempting to license, because it was his understanding that in other towns, say if you were coming in to cut your grass, you had Evans Landscaping to come in to cut your grass, you'd be required to get a business license. That would not be, at least under the EDC's recommendation, part of the recommendation. It would be addressed Burr Ridge businesses. So we don't want to have 3,500, 4,000 business transactions being licensed, but to Trustee Snyder's point, it would be limited to valets operating at Burr Ridge businesses.
Okay.
We have had instances arise, since right now we only have the zoning certificate of occupancy for most properties. We have had instances arise where a business licensing process and a citation process for a violation of the requirements related to the license would help with enforcement. If you do have an issue with a particular business not following the basic rules, in some instances, the places of eating tax, the business license is another, is another avenue for potentially addressing compliance with the codes. So, not necessarily related specifically to valets, but businesses generally.
Yes.
So I hear your argument about the valet situation, and Trustee Scapa also yours about it, and to me it is like what you said. They use public roads, they use public parking. They have a little different requirement than the plumber that I have to come work on my own home. If he messes up my home, I'm going to have a flood in my own home. But the valets are using our public right-of-ways, and as we've known, we've had discussions in the past about some parking issues. So to me, they or anyone else that would be using the public domain in such a way might need some further consideration. But to me, that's something for the next, I'd like to see it on the agenda in the future as well.
Well, we're talking about business license, and now looks like we're targeting valets for some reason.
I'm just saying as a separate, we're talking about business licensing, maybe there's some more detail needed there. I was agreeing with the trustee.
I don't see the sense to it yet.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to specifically pick out valet. We went through a long and a few meetings going over the requirements for the parking to give a situation for Capri. It's not working, so can we enforce it back to what Scott is stating? Do we have to have Chief Madden and team go out there and give them a citation? Is that the best way? I'm just trying to make it easy for the resident or the Capri restaurant. It's not him who's parking the cars. It's not the 6 and 8 and 10 cars that are parked all over there. So I can't park, so I'm going to park by Brookhaven. So if he can't do it, what's already what Gigi and Capri agreed to, and we can't get it enforced, what do we do? Because we're still sitting in the same situation which you've brought up with Trustee Francis a year ago. So it's the same with the parking issue. So how do we address it? When this was on the agenda, I thought I'd throw it up for discussion. Nice, simple way. I'm not trying to go around anything or targeting one specific, but it's something we've approved to go forward on, and it's not being done, and nothing's happening. So that's why I'm asking the question.
One question. Chief, has there been any problems or complaints in regards to the valet parking in there?
We haven't received any complaints. However, I was directed by the village administrator to keep an eye on the property, specifically where the valets are parking the cars, and provided Doug with a report on that. We watched it for a period of about 2.5 weeks and found out that, in summary, they were not doing what was expected of them with the special use. Is that the term?
Right.
Thank you. So that was provided, but I haven't received any complaints that I know of offhand.
So you are watching it more closely now?
Yes, and during normal patrol, if there's fire lane violations, if there's handicap violations, there are some signage issues that I know are being worked on currently that would provide us with enforcement authority. We have to have the proper signage to have the enforcement.
Yes.
It's being addressed.
Chief, are any tickets being written for fire lane violations or for handicap space violations during that 2 weeks?
If there's a violation, yes, the officers are writing them.
They're writing them? Excellent. Thank you.
And Chief, just to clarify, you said you found that they were not in full compliance with the agreement. Is that what you said?
Well, I'd have to defer to the village administrator for the exact, what the valet or the property owner is not, I'm sorry, the restaurant owner is not complying with. We provided a report, we were given direction on what to watch out for, and that's specifically what we reported back.
Yes, based on the report I got from the police department, there have been isolated violations of the special use conditions.
Yes.
So this sounds like more of a compliance issue versus a licensing issue. So how do we get that person to comply with what we've got, with our ordinance that?
Well, I think ultimately the question comes down to an incidence. Is it the restaurant not complying or the valet not complying? And I think that's kind of the philosophical question that was brought up is, who are we ultimately trying to target? Is it the person who received the special use and or variance, or is it the person actually operating the rental cars, or the valet service? Right. It's just a question of, is there an additional need for a layer of oversight and regulation over that user?
Yeah, well, we're addressing it. Business hired this company.
Certainly.
So that's the person that we've got to issue any compliance issues with. I mean, if they hired this company to do work, it's the owner's problem to cure the issue.
Yes.
Chief Madden, was the street just north or to the, wherever, of Capri, not in the main drag, were there cars parked along the side of the street with flashing lights?
I was told that there were, yes, on
Okay.
Lincolnshire.
Thank you very much, Chief. Mr. Chairman, I got a question for you. If they're on the street, they're putting if the cars are being parked on a street with their flashers on, and our village police department has seen them doing, they're not following what we've given to Capri Restaurant. Capri Restaurant says they're following it. We know they're not. So who's causing the issue? The village administrator has documentation, and I'm asking, so what I'd like to bring it on the agenda, and we'll discuss it further.
From what I understand, the village administrator has asked the police department to watch it a little closer.
They did, and there's still cars unflashing.
And I would say that right now, to put it on the agenda, knowing it's being watched, would be my recommendation to get a report next meeting from the chief on what has gone, rather than putting on the agenda to be specific. It's being looked at now. So
it's already been looked at. It's already reported to the village administrator. If we go to the village attorney, what can we do? Do we cite
Sounds
Capri?
like we have
Citation?
one of two entities, if not both, that potentially are in violation of the special use.
So I'd like to find out what we're supposed to do then. So if you please give us the guidance for what to do.
Writing a citation, yeah.
Okay.
So, although I don't know what the nature of the violations is, but it sounds like there are violations of the special use conditions.
So Doug, do we have something you can send us out, or discussion what a citation would look like, or what it is, or do we go to Chief Madden?
Well, right now, we can issue citations, and we have, for parking in handicap spaces and parking in the fire lane. We're still waiting, and Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, we're still waiting for the parking in designated spaces only signs.
Yes, those are in the mail. So
Those
basically,
are
we've had issues
in the
parking with
process.
striped areas. Yep.
And once those are up, then we can issue tickets for parking
outside of a designated space.
outside of designated spaces. As far as parking on McClintock where there's no parking, I think we can issue tickets if there's parking on McClintock where it says no parking. The other conditions regarding valet were part of the zoning approval back in October. The petitioner in that case has not begun using that special use approval yet because it's wintertime, and that was for expanded outdoor dining. After consulting with the village attorney, it was his direction that we can't start enforcing those specific conditions until they implement or begin using their special use approval. So if they use that outdoor dining in May or June, from that point forward, year-round, that special use requires other conditions regarding the valet service in the restaurant, specifically the 2 people on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the 2 valet drivers, and most importantly, which is real teeth in your enforcement ability, it specifically says if there's any violation of that special use, that the board at the next agenda will consider revocation of the special use. We don't have that authority yet.
I thought we didn't have the parking issue. I thought the employees had to park in the parking lot. That wasn't even part of getting the special use. Nor was tying up everything with the valet service, 6, 8, 10 cars, parked sideways, showing the tickets. And I've sent pictures to you. I'm sure other trustees have sent pictures. So these violations are still happening. And when I recall, and I'll go back and look it up so I'll be ready for next meeting, but it wasn't part of the special use for Capri Restaurant. The valet was going to get straightened out to quit killing the parking because we had enough troubles over there, if you remember.
Can I make a recommendation? We want you to have good information and accurate information. Can we bring this back at the next meeting for
That'd be great.
with a summary of the
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
That's
That's what I asked
special
for.
use and what can be done, what the options are going forward.
That'd be great. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion
Yeah.
to approve the business license program that we've discussed here tonight, implement and approve the, where is it on the agenda? The business license program.
Make that motion?
I'm making that motion.
Second.
A second. Any further comments on that business license program? Roll call.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passes. I think that'll be a good start, and it'll give us a lot of information on the businesses that are in the village. And we will, Doug, put it on for next meeting to review.
You want an update on the special uses for Capri Restaurant and the status of the enforcement?
What would you say would be the?
Do you want the discussion of valet licensing? There's 2 different discussions.
Valet
We
license.
got to include the restaurant, because is it the valet or the restaurant, is it chicken or the egg?
Accountable.
Happy to have. I'll make a motion to have the staff review and bring us all the situational, what the guidance from the attorney stated earlier, so we can review it and have an open discussion about those things aren't being taken care of.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Scappa?
Yes.
6-0.
Okay, motion passed. Chief, could you give us an update in 2 weeks on what you find out about the situation in the Village Center and County Line Square? Thank you.
I just want to, that will come from police and from code enforcement.
Okay.
But it's specifically, you want an update on enforcement of parking and special use regulations at County Line Square and Capri Restaurant. Is that correct?
There's other restaurants have valets.
All valet.
Right.
All restaurants that use valet.
Right.
Got it.
Correct.
Correct.
Before,
Thank you.
before we granted that special use to the petitioner, he had one prior that was,
Right.
okay. So that one he's got to follow.
Right.
Which goes back to,
Okay, so let's not, the special use is, we can't enforce that, but he has, what do you call it?
The conditions were
Conditions,
different.
I'm sorry, he's got
and
conditions
The enforcement
from-
is a little bit more challenging with the previous one.
I'm sorry?
The enforcement is more challenging with the prior special use
Okay,
because of
well,
the way
that's
it's
what we'll
written.
review. Okay.
I mean, the shopping center didn't provide this, or the signs were there, and then the signs disappeared, and then we were gonna order the signs. We ordered them a long time ago. Are they in a
Right, that was in
slow
the
train from somewhere? Because it's been like, we're into another year, and we started this back in like February, March of last year. So we're gonna be a year waiting for signs to get installed so Chief Madden and crew can give a ticket correctly. So are they gonna be here before the next meeting?
It's been since October when the special use was approved.
So are the
And
signs
I'm
en route?
disappointed we don't have those signs too, and it's partly the fault of the property owner. But the village staff, we didn't follow up as quickly as I would have liked.
And I thought that we, since the property owner didn't go order the signs, I thought we ordered them and we were gonna install them and give him the bill.
It's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
The property owner did install them. They were wrong. That took some time. Now we are in the, we've ordered them, correct, Evan? We've ordered the signs.
Property owners ordered them, yeah, they're coming.
Property owners ordered them
The
now.
property owner has ordered them and they're coming.
Thank you.
I don't have an exact timeline on that, though.
No, I apologize that didn't happen quicker. I wish it had too, but they will be there.
Yes.
One last thing, I don't mean to beat a dead horse. In the prior special use, there was talk about the no parking fire lane signs. They had disappeared, dwindled down to 3 or 4. They are asked to put in, I can't remember the exact numbers, please do the research, 13 or 14. Now some have disappeared again. So please go back to the prior special use, how many they're supposed to have, do a count how many are out there now, and then ask that the mall owner reinstall the ones that are missing. Police can't enforce the no parking fire lane if there's no sign.
Anything else? Presentation of calendar year 2018 strategic goals update.
We, in 2017-19, the village board established a set of strategic goals, providing you with quarterly updates of those goals. And at this time, we have prepared an annual report of the goals, kind of summarizing our progress on the various goals in the year 2018. For the sake of time, I'll just hit the highlights on this, but again, as I did with the goals, budget goals, if there's one I skip over or if you have questions, please stop me and be glad to go into more detail on any of these items. I'll start with the goal of becoming debt-free. Our debt service fund is currently self-sustaining, meaning that the interest income in that fund is paying for the debt service costs, and the final payment is not due until 2022, so there's no real urgency to close that out yet. And if we're still continuing to pursue a sale of Rustic Acres property, which if all goes well will be sufficient to retire the debt and hopefully before the 2022 deadline. Communication strategies. We presented an overview of our communications at the last village board meeting. Staff is now in the process of preparing a communications policy and guideline manual for the village. Under the goal of defining Burr Ridge, the village has hired Kivett from Chicago. We had meetings last week with the hotels, which I understand went quite well. and Kevin is preparing to take over that contract effective May 1st, and we're looking forward to a new marketing program for the hotels and restaurants, which will include branding and defining Burbridge as a marketing unit. Really good news on the I-55 IDOT sign. That was a strategic goal. I finally, just today, got the written confirmation that they have approved a downtown Burr Ridge sign on I-55. It will be on the northbound lanes as you approach County Line Road, and it will announce downtown Burr Ridge. There's some parameters they define, but we will be implementing that in the coming weeks or months.
Nice.
Very, very pleased to see that. Economic Development Committee promotions. I think there's, in the economic development categories, you can see in all these goals, there's a whole lot to report. I'm very pleased with the progress the village has been making in the area of economic development. You know, that's how we you know, balance our revenues and how we're able to fund programs in the village through sales tax and other economic development opportunities. We joined the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau in 2018. That has brought new business to Burbridge. It's brought businesses to our hotels, which puts hotel tax dollars in our revenue stream. So it's a significant benefit to the village. The Economic Development Committee has made significant strides in redefining itself. The village board has approved some of those actions. We look forward to working with the newly constituted Economic Development Commission. Identify cost savings. As you can see from the discussion earlier tonight on the general fund, we've had a lot of success in that area. You know, in the strategic goals annual report here, I highlight some of the savings, you know, in changes in personnel and finance and administration. We anticipate a $17,000 savings for fiscal year 19 and 20. Elimination of the brush pickup actually was closer to $20,000 in savings. Our sweeping contract has been successful, which allowed us to eliminate a $300,000 sweeper replacement from the fiscal year 19-20 budget. You can see some of the other items listed in the report where we've been able to cut costs and save money. So noted one of the biggest ones was moving to a smaller health insurance network without any disruptions to employees, but actually reducing our costs by somewhere in the vicinity of 5%, which you saw earlier tonight. In terms of maintaining expenses, we continue to look at opportunities to save and to keep expenses at the current levels. We are in the process of still analyzing our health insurance benefit package to see if there's opportunities there, either from a new provider or otherwise. We're also looking at our building inspectional services, which is the number one, behind personnel, the number one cost in our community development department. Looking at ways to save money there. The general fund budget in 2018 was 2.8% increase over the prior fiscal year, and we're looking at keeping it at that level or lower for 19-20. Monitoring the economic development plan, we did an update of the plan in 2018, and with the new Economic Development Committee, we're looking forward to working with that group to continue to update that plan and to implement it. Additionally, one of our intentions in some of the personnel changes in the Administration and Community Development Department when we replaced a clerical position with a management analyst was to focus more on economic development. Andres Beltran, who was here earlier, has done a great job in helping Evan and myself with economic development. As I said, I'm very excited about some of the work we're doing in economic development in the village. And I think the way our organization is structured now and the people we have on board, the best is yet to come in that regard. Onboarding was a goal of the village board. We've continued to look for opportunities for training. There was a training opportunity through the College of DuPage last year that I know one or more of the trustees attended. Trustee Francis attended, and I believe a plan commissioner or two attended.
Louisa Haka attended. It was the role of the elected official was outstanding.
We'll continue to look for those and provide those opportunities.
And
free, yes, thank you. You know, almost all of, we had very good attendance at the planning and zoning workshop on January 9th. We as a staff felt very good about that. We felt that the interaction with the Board of Trustees and with the Plan Commission was extremely helpful. You know, we have three new Plan Commissioners in 2018. Although we sit down and do an orientation with them one-on-one at the staff level, I think having the workshop that we had does more for onboarding than anything else. And it's a reminder for all of us, even the veteran commissioners and trustees. I think it was a good reminder of some of the rules and parameters around planning and zoning in the Plan Commission. Tonight, in front of you, I've given you our updated orientation manual. Before every election, every local election, we provide the candidates and current trustees an orientation manual. We did significant updates to it this year. This is the first time I've been involved in preparing the orientation manual, so we really tried to revamp that and provide a more user-friendly guide that summarizes the key aspects of being a trustee in Burr Ridge, and we'll also provide that to candidates and also post it on our website for anyone and everyone who might be interested in knowing what it's like or what it's all about to be a trustee. And any feedback you have, I mean, even though this is done and published for this year, we'll be doing it again in 2 years. And if there's feedback, ways we can make it better, things that are missing or you don't understand or whatever, please let me know. And we'll make notes and incorporate that for the next go-around. In regard to the zip code, as you know, we were not successful, have not been successful in getting our own zip code, but we are still looking at the address system, which is on your agenda tonight, and we'll get to.
What is the comment that they keep rejecting it? I know it's been rejected about 8 times now, and you know, a lot of the business don't like the mail coming back Willowbrook.
The U.S. Postal Service has their own idea of and their own methods of how they deliver mail, and we don't meet their criteria. And it's pretty clear and direct that we just simply don't meet their criteria for having our own zip code.
And what is that?
I think having been intimately involved, if you don't mind, the specific issue is that we're too small. We don't have enough units in the address system. We tried every way to appeal that. If we were a little bit bigger, had a few more units in the system, we would probably.
But the thing I look at, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have a larger residence than Willowbrook has. And if you want to, we got 500 over small businesses here. Willowbrook has the big thing. Why is everything Willowbrook? Why isn't it Burr Ridge?
It sounded like that decision, that ship sailed, and we're stuck with it. Is the shortest answer I could give you.
You know, they're talking about it, but yet we have more addresses than Willowbrook has.
I think that particular issue is a function of the physical post office being in Willowbrook, so they get the name on the zip code more often than we do.
And
they don't have their own zip code either.
Those units, it's residences and businesses.
I believe so. It's postal units was what I recalled from the letter, residents and businesses.
It's discouraging.
Okay.
Yeah, I can assure you there was a lot of effort put into it. Trustee Model spent a lot of time, which I appreciated very much. I think the village did everything we could do to make it happen, and it just wasn't to be. But maybe there'll be opportunities in the future. We'll certainly keep it on the radar. Diversify village revenues and attract revenue business, kind of take these together. There's a lot of grant funding that a variety of grant funding that we've achieved over the last year and a half. We're also looking at new businesses coming into town that pay sales tax and other revenues. We've taken efforts to attract a construction material company to bring their office to Burr Ridge, which would be a point of sales, but no construction materials. So pretty much an ideal situation for the village. That hasn't happened yet, but we're still working with them to hopefully make that happen. The board endorsed Class 6B property tax incentive for Midwest at 101 Tower Drive. It's another revenue sales tax provider, and we're looking forward to them opening up in the near future and adding to the diversity of village revenues. County Line Square is 100% leased. There's a new owner of the Burr Ridge Village Center. We're working with them to identify different types of businesses that are needed in the village and would help the village's economic base. Department reviews. We've various times throughout 2018 we came to you with different ideas and moving some pieces around. Bottom line is we've been successful in doing that. We review each department when that happens, how best we can provide service, how we might be able to do it cheaper, or how we might be able to do it better, or both. In some cases, we've been able to cut costs and improve our services, and we're pleased with the progress we've made there. Under performance metrics, as we stated earlier, we're purchasing a software system that will help us hopefully implement a performance measurement system for the village. We looked at other things over the course of the year that didn't bear fruit, but we're hoping that this one will be something that we can make use of and be able to provide feedback to the village board. The TCF property, staff has identified and the board has approved a hotel sports tourism facility feasibility study. I just heard on the news today that TCF was merging with another bank, so it's probably why we haven't gotten a lot of feedback from them. Been preoccupied with other matters, but we feel good about where we're at with that. That is the most important real estate in the village right now, in my opinion, in terms of the future of the village and our success. And so I'm excited to be working on that. Evan Walter has been very helpful in seeing that through. Our membership in DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau is a key aspect of that. That's one of the advantages that we've seen from having joined that organization. They've contributed a lot to helping us with that project. Another goal was the I-55, looking at the I-55 pedestrian bridge. We did present two concepts to the Pathway Commission in January of this year. Both estimates were very general, let's say, very broad, rough estimates, both around $2 million. That doesn't even include the acquisition of property, which would be significant. So that's on the table. We know we have something to look at if the board decides they want to look further into that, or if an opportunity comes up in some way in the future to do anything with that. And then finally, intergovernmental cooperation. There's a lot of different areas where we've worked with our neighbors, joint purchasing agreements that saved us money. Evan and I are both involved with DuPage mayors and managers, where we get a lot of valuable feedback and support from other villages. And Evan and I both worked on them with the DuPage mayors and managers regarding legislation at the state level that would benefit the village. We're nearing completion of the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Willow Springs regarding the Bugey Lane properties. And of course, we've had extensive interaction and intergovernmental cooperation with our neighbors regarding the Sterigenics issue since last August. So in summary, that is our annual report of the strategic goals. Your feedback at any time is encouraged or hopefully requested. You know, I feel that our staff has done a very good job of listening to what your goals are and putting those into place and implementing those goals to the benefit of the community. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Doug? Okay, next item up would be the continued discussion of the Burr Ridge address system.
I'd like to make a motion to table this till the second meeting in April. I think that's after the budget stuff is done. Maybe we'll have a little more time on the agenda, unless it's urgent.
There's been a motion, second?
Second.
Okay, motion is second to table this till an April meeting.
Second meeting, or after the budget is done.
Any discussion?
No discussion, motion to table.
No, okay. You need roll call? Yeah. Roll call?
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
6-0.
Yeah. Okay, motion passes. Doug, put it on in second meeting in April. Now, on J, I asked that to be removed because the way it's set up in the thing, it's waiving of the bid process, and I didn't like the way that was said. So Dave, could you give a little reason why?
Sure. Back in 2014, before my time, I believe we went out for the active bids. We got a good bid from Kramer Tree Services. They've done other communities around our area as well. They've just been able to increase their prices just marginally every year after year and provide the same or better service year after year. So we've extended that contract in the past since I believe it was 2014 when we went out to bid. The subsequent years were always extended. So that's just continuing. We're on the dwindling phase, of course, of our treatment plan. So yeah, it's just a marginal expense to go ahead and keep that active program. We call it the managed tree care, the managed program for the Emerald Ash Board. Keep that part going for the treatment.
Any questions? I make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
6-0.
Motion passed. Next item will be M, was removed from the consent agenda. Approval of recommendation to hire replacement patrol officer to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Officer Juan Santiago. Yes.
If you have a need to address this in any way in closed session, you can do that. If you want to discuss an issue in open session, that's fine.
All I would like to do is we, as a board, have discussed this scenario of hiring and police officers, and I've asked Chief Madden with Trustee Paveza before the meeting if I could possibly meet with Chief during the next 2 weeks and come back just with some additional information. Rather than continue to, well, we'll just drop it like that. I'd like to table it to maybe the next meeting.
So you want to table this till after your meeting with the chief and
Yes.
say next meeting?
That'd be fine thing. Okay. Make a motion. Let me meet with the chief and bring some more information to the board before we act on this particular item.
Okay, so you're making a motion to table hiring the replacement officer?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Yes.
All right, so Chief, is there immediate need to fill the spot now? Can you wait 2 weeks?
Yes.
But if no longer than that, if I could meet with Trustee Snyder. But the reason being is for a replacement officer and the work that has to be done with the BFPC takes about 2.5 months, and I've got an academy spot out. It the end of April.
I know it takes a long time to onboard these guys.
Okay, there's been a motion to table and second till the next meeting. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, roll.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
No.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
5-1.
Other considerations for announcement, deliberation, and/or discussion. No official action would be taken. Anyone? Resident comments? Yes.
I commend our Public Works Department over the last few weeks for the outstanding job they've done for snow and ice removal in our village. They worked many long hours, late nights, all night, make sure that our streets are clean and safe so that we all go to work, go to school, come home. And I appreciate their hard work, their time away from their families. An outstanding job. And when I go into other villages, some of those those other villages haven't been touched yet. They're dangerous. There's accidents, and I just want to pass along job well done to our public works employees. Thank you.
I second that. Well done.
And if I could add, I heard from 3 residents today who complimented you on Madison Street. They said it was down to pavement and they didn't really expect that at all. So you're clearly, your team is on top of it. Thank you.
Yes.
Just wanted to make a quick announcement. The Village Center has officially closed its sale to its new owners. It's now owned by Edwards Realty Group out of Orland Park, local company. Staff will be meeting with them on Thursday to discuss new opportunities for events, tenants, everything under the sun, what we can do to work together to make that property even better than what it was. So again, Edwards Realty Group and Core Acquisitions out of Chicago and Orland Park, so we're very excited to meet with them and start a new partnership together.
Residents' comments? What do you own? Reports and communications from village officials?
I have one.
Yes.
I don't usually talk. Due to the cold weather, Groot will not be picking up garbage at the usual time. They will be delayed one day, so it'll be Friday and Saturday. They're closed on Wednesday.
So the garbage pickups will be delayed one day?
Delayed
just
one
like
day.
It was a holiday?
No, because of the weather.
But yeah, because of the weather.
Right.
Okay.
And how are we going to get that word out to all the residents?
It's on our website already. I don't know what else we can do.
Okay.
That's why I'm announcing it.
Text.
Pardon me?
I received a text.
Did you?
Yep.
Okay.
Could we do something like Nixle, or we don't use Nixle for that?
Yeah.
We could.
Yeah, well, I know Janet has sent it out in all of our social media.
Okay. Great, thank you.
It sounds like it has gone out on Nixle.
Good hands.
Yeah. So,
Non-residents? Yeah, I'd like to.
I would just add, on the cold weather, I'll be meeting with Dave Preissig and John Madden, Chief Madden tomorrow. Residents are encouraged to watch Nixle, watch the social media and our communications for information about that. We all get very nervous about these things, and usually we afterwards we feel like we overreacted, but I don't think you can overreact when you've got serious weather like this coming. You've got to be prepared, and I encourage residents to keep a watch on our communications, and we'll try to keep people updated on various measures that the village is taking.
Okay, I'd like to take a 5-minute break before we vote to go into closed session. What?
You can go ahead and vote to go.
Yeah, why don't you just?
You can recess in between.
Okay, we'll vote to go into, can I have a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make a motion to go.
Second?
Third.
Who seconded?
Pardon?
Al did?
That was the exasperated.
Okay, roll call.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Okay. 5-minute recess.